Hello, my friends. Welcome back. We have another groom and bath video for you because I know you're loving it. I don't know if I'm loving it, but you're loving it. So this again is going to be a longer video because there's a lot more process to grooming and bathing and all the fun stuff. If you haven't watched the video of me grooming Misty, you can take a look at that one. That is where I explain the process step by step as I run through it. So I'm not going to do that again. I have already done Lotus's hooves. She is feeling feisty today. She's kind of ornery. Can't say I blame her. She knows what's coming. She's one of our older goats. She's not old, but she's older. So she's been through this routine multiple times, multiple years. She knows that there have been goats leaving the stall and going back into the stall wet. She had to walk across a wet floor to get on the stand. The stand is wet. I'm wet. She knows what's coming, and she's going to be a little difficult about it. So she was a challenge getting our hooves done today. She wanted to kick and fight and just be difficult, and right now she's not standing up straight. I need to bring the muck bucket over. I keep moving it out of the way because I don't want it to get filled with water when I do all the bath stuff. But then it stays too far away and I have to walk back and forth each time the brush fills with goop. Good news is she does not have much of anything in her hair. Unlike Persephone, Lotus is much more of a diva goat. She does faint, but she doesn't fall over faint. She tends to just stiffen up. She's also never going to walk through a puddle if she can help it. If she can avoid any sort of dirt or mud or yuck, she will do it. So what is really working on back here is urine stains. You know, she's got a lot of hair. She's got long hair. And there's just no way around getting urine on the back of her when she goes to the bathroom. So that's what is kind of sticky and clumpy, but we're going to get rid of that. So this side is already all brushed out. Her undercoat or underbelly is clear. Like I said, she's just a fabulous goat, right? When it comes to this kind of stuff. She's an easy groom. She always has been. She doesn't have a whole lot of undercoat so that when spring comes, she's not shedding out cashmere. She has a beautiful silky texture to her coat, and she doesn't choose to get dirty. So, you know, what more could you ask for, right? All right, so we've talked about already the grooming process or the bathing process. We've talked about the show itself, how it's run. We've also talked about my allergies. And we've talked about, you know, just some of my thoughts around the show, you know, the standard, etc. One of the things I mentioned is that a judge had once said that they were not necessarily faulting my goats, but they felt my goats were on the larger side, and that is why they weren't getting top placement, even though they are beautiful and have all of the things they need to have to be top placement. They were just bigger. And Lotus falls into that category. We've talked a little bit during some of my other grooming videos, the normal grooming videos, about how the visual standard for this breed has started to change a bit. The show, you know, the owner, so to speak, of the breed foundation has decided, and I shouldn't say decided, right? The standard always said that there was a desire for the goats to be shorter than the current standard. and that at some point in the future, it was likely that the standard would reduce to that shorter stature. And last year, it did reduce to that shorter stature. Lotus is still within that shorter stature frame, so, certainly not a problem. But now she's really sort of kind of at the top of it, right? Whereas before she was a couple of inches of clearance, now she's sort of right at the top edge of the visual standard. And that is hurting her in the ring. She has 2 legs of her master champion. I would love to finish her up, get her 3rd leg. That's all she needs. I had already determined, actually a year and a half ago, that I was not going to show her anymore. She was getting older. She was not getting the same look-see from the judges because she was getting older, because she is now taller and they're looking for smaller goats. But she just looks so good right now. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because we took a couple of years off. Well, not a couple of years. We took a year and a half off from the show ring. If it's because, she's continued to recover from her polio episode, or if it's just, nature has just said, we're going to give you a beautiful coat right now. She just looks fantastic. And so I'm putting her in the show. I don't know. Like I said, I've already said I was going to retire her and never put her back, and she was just never going to finish. She looks so good right now. I can't do it. I have to, for my own personal sanity, I have to put her in the show. Will I continue after this show if she doesn't do anything? Probably not. Like if she goes through 8 shows with 8 judges and she doesn't get a nod, then yeah, she's unfortunately now at the top of the visual standard. They're looking for smaller goats, and they're just going to overlook her every time as a result, which stinks. But it's also a risk that I run when I don't, travel around the country with them to show them. Because when they're in their prime, and she's kind of past her prime, to be fair, she's older. When they're in their prime and they're getting those championship legs, the easiest way to finish is to go to a lot of shows. But we only have 2 shows a year that are within driving distance for me, or at least within a reasonable driving distance. And that's it. That's all I can support, right? I'm not taking a week off of work to drive, cross country with the goats. That's just not what we're in it for. So that is a risk I ran by, when the year that she was crushing it in the ring, all I needed to do was maybe take her to 1 or 2 more shows and find just one more judge that really thought she was the outstanding goat of the day, and we could have finished her. So a little bit of a shame, a little bit of a bummer for me, because I would love to have her finished. But we'll see what happens this year. We'll see if she gets any nods. If she doesn't get any nods, if they're just, they're looking past all of her beauty and her coat and her texture and her conformation, and they're just saying, like essentially she's not even being looked at because she's taller, then so be it. She'll be done. If she gets a nod but doesn't get the win, well, that's also always a possibility. She might take a couple of 1st or 2nd places and just not have quite the, what she needs to be the best of the best. I'm okay with that. That might encourage me, though, to bring her to 1 more show. So yeah, poor Lotus. She's been through it, and we're gonna make her go through it again. But you do what you gotta do. So I always laugh, right? I tell the farm hubby all the time that he does things so stupidly inefficient, and then here I am hand pumping conditioner onto my goat. I could just open the lid and, actually pour some out, but No, every time I make fun of myself for doing it, I will hand pump that sucker and do it. Pump, 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 pump. I don't know. I don't even know why they come with pumps. I honestly hate that because I never get the rest of it out with the pump, right? You still have to take the pump off and flip the thing upside down to get all of it out. And I don't like to waste anything. So yeah, there's that. Now you may have noticed if you've been watching the grooming and bathing videos that I'm moving much faster with Lotus than I did with Misty and Persephone. And that is because she is so anti-dirt, anti-anything that there isn't much for me to do other than, you know, get the dirt that's on her skin off, get the, you know, whatever normal natural tangles have happened. I've got one right here that I'm working on. But there isn't as much effort needed with her, just based on how she happens to maintain her coat and how she rolls with staying clean, staying out of brush and tangles and briars and anything else that they can find. I mean, there are times, especially this time of the year, Persephone sometimes looks like she went and found a pile of leaves to roll in. She doesn't have a pile of leaves to roll in, but somehow or other she seems to have found something that makes her look that way. And that's all right. I have no problem with that. It just means that Lotus is a pleasure to groom, and one of the reasons that I like to have her line. So I had her mom, Jezebel, in my herd. Jezebel went earlier this year to a new farm to be a part of a breeding program there. And I have Lotus's daughter, Sock Monkey, now, who will be next on the stand, because their line is really, all of them sort of maintain this type of easy coat, not a whole lot of tangles, not a whole lot of undercoat, not a whole lot of work for me. I found a few things on her belly here that I'm working through now before I switch to the other side. But overall, we're in pretty good shape. And some of these are really destined to be done during her second groom, because she will be up on the stand again in 6 days before we leave for the show, for another groom. So the first groom, you know, should take out all the big stuff and should really make the second groom quite fast and easy. But at the same time, that only happens if I do the extra effort now. And some of these things, some of these tangles, especially the ones underneath that I'm working on, so under her belly, in between her thighs and her udder, don't show up until you get them wet, right? Because they really are just hidden. And even grooming dry hair, they just don't come out the same way as when you get them wet and start to really scrub and shampoo, and then suddenly you're like, wait, where did this come from? Right? It wasn't even there when I brushed her before I shampooed her. So that's all I'm doing now, is some of these underbelly ones that have shown up, I want to make sure I have them taken care of before I switch to the other side. Now she's got conditioner on, and that will stay on while I work the other side. Forgive the nose itch. I am itchy, sniffly. The allergies are just not having it today. But the good news is we're almost done. So I don't know what kind of questions you guys will have for me. Make sure you put them in the comments so I know what I need to answer for the next round of grooming with these guys. And also be sure to tell me if watching goats get bathed while I yammer on is not of interest, because then I will happily not do it. I don't want to make stuff for you guys that's boring as all get out. Well, I guess technically I do want to make stuff for you that's boring as all get out, because that's what I do every day. I'm like, I come down to the barn and I try and find something interesting. And when I can't find something interesting, you just get the standard, look, everybody's standing around doing nothing. Yay. All right. So this was not a full shampoo bottle when I started. It was about 3/4 full. And I share that just to give you sort of a perspective of how much shampoo I'm actually using, right? It's not like a human head of hair. This is an entire body of a goat that I am washing. I am trying to get down to every layer and everything. I use my fingers because that's when I will find these little hidden gems of waxy dirt, right? Like just built up yuck from the year that start to come out once you use the shampoo. And I want to find that, right? If I were using gloves or a curry comb, would it be just as effective? Yeah, of course. But I wouldn't be able to feel what was happening. I wouldn't be able to know as I'm working through, right? Like, this is my opportunity to, beyond when I'm grooming and sort of rubbing them down. Now I'm really in there, right? I'm getting every nook and cranny, every nook and cranny, every little corner, all the hidden places that sometimes, get missed when you're doing a standard groom. And that's where I can look for and see or feel lumps, bumps. Luckily, knock wood, I have never found lumps and bumps. Every once in a while, I find a tick. Every once in a while, I find dirt I think is a tick. But it's a good way for me to really get in there and feel every inch and every piece of their body, right? Like, and this is just bedding that I found. But again, the brushes, the tools, to me, nothing's quite as good as when you're laying hands on them like this. Of course, I get sopping wet because, I get the spray back. I get covered in shampoo and conditioner. And in the last video, fun times, I had a spider show up on the back of my neck. And it turns out, of course, I had to look at it afterwards. I kind of flung it across the way on video because it freaked me out, right? Like something was crawling on the back of my neck and I just reached around to itch it. And suddenly I was holding a creepy crawly, which was unexpected. So yes, it got flung out just a little bit. And it was a wolf spider. So if you're in the area, you know what wolf spiders are. They're absolutely not harmless. In fact, they're really kind of cute. They're fuzzy, but they are big. And they are fast. And they are big. So this was not a full-grown wolf spider. It was a younger one. So it wasn't huge, but it was big enough. Thank you very much. How it got on my neck, I'll never know. I don't know if it dropped from the ceiling or if it crawled up from the floor, probably to get out of the water, which would be my guess. And then it ended up on the back of my neck. But, I am all for, I have no problem with bugs and creepy crawlies and spideys, as long as they stay where they belong and not on my person. When they're in the house, I will, capture them and move them out of the house unless they decide to be somewhere that scares the bejeebers out of me. And then sometimes they don't survive. And I'm sorry, that's a bit of the Darwin thing because, like I had a spider. So wolf spiders are really funny. Like I said, they're big and they move fast. And this is the time of the year that they're coming inside instead of staying outside. And they tend to only show up on your living room floor when you are sitting on the couch at night, beer in hand, relaxing, watching football or NASCAR or whatever sport, you know, you're watching, or TV show for those that aren't watching sports. And you just see this thing out of the corner of your eye scuttle across the floor. And they move so quick. So like by the time you maybe pull your feet up or you stand up to go capture them, or heck, just turn your head and look at your cats that are sitting there not doing anything. Indoor cats, useless. They're gone, right? That thing's back under the couch or it's found a corner to hide in. It's gone. And then you spend the rest of the night on super alert, waiting for this giant spider to come out again. And they never do. Anyway, that's wolf spiders. They're harmless and they're easy to relocate if you can find them, but they're not easy to find because they move at lightning speed and they like to only show up in and around the times that it's inconvenient and most convenient for scaring you. So what I was saying though, right, is the only time I really harm a creepy crawly is if it is in a location that it shouldn't be and it inadvertently makes me jump. So the one on the back of my neck was a good example of that. Like, you know, poor guy could have, or girl, whatever it may have been, could have met its demise. Thankfully it didn't, but that would have been reason alone to meet its demise. The other one that recently, unfortunately, did not survive was the one that had decided to get on the handle of my refrigerator. And it's one of those handles where like the back is hidden, right? It's not a pull handle where you can just see the opening. It's one of those curved around the side, so you put your hand in the little pocket and pull. Well, it was in that little pocket. And let me tell you, boy, howdy. That was not pleasant, and it startled me enough that, you know, my reaction instinctively was, you know, to not only pull back, but then sort of smush at the same time. And apologies to that poor spider and all the spider gods out there and all the people that love spiders. I actually, like I said, don't mind them at all. In fact, I just knitted a shawl full of spiders. It was so much fun. Great Halloween shawl. Anyway, yeah. Hiding in the recesses of the refrigerator handle is a way to not survive life at my house. So if you haven't seen the Persephone video, check that one out and you can watch a spider decide to scare the daylights out of me by being on the back of my neck. I don't think you actually can see the spider. I'm on this side when it happens and it's on the back of my neck. So sorry, you don't get to see that entertainment value. And it's not like a horror show where you get to watch it crawling up my back. Ooh, that would be terrible, wouldn't it? Y'all be watching that and I have no idea. So anyway, we're just about done here with Lotus, believe it or not. I'm rinsing her conditioner on this side. I can see, you know, some loose dirt that's starting to come off her spine area, and that's going to get combed out here real quick. We're going to spray her down with conditioning spray that's leaving. There are several things I'm not doing with any of these goats right now. I am not washing and polishing hooves. Washing hooves will happen with their next round. There's no point in me doing it now. I did trim their hooves, right? The standard grooming trim. But washing them doesn't make any sense because they're going to go out there and stand in poop and mud and other fun things throughout the next week. So it doesn't make any sense to put any effort into that. I do pick their eye boogies every time I groom them. You just don't see that. I don't do that on camera. It's kind of like the hoof trimming. I just don't do that on camera anymore. But that won't get done thoroughly until the next groom, and then it'll get touched up again at the show. Same thing with cleaning their rear end, making sure that there's no, residue, grease, waxy buildup. They actually get a waxy buildup in the crevices around their tail. Totally normal, totally expected. It doesn't have a smell. It's just a waxy buildup, but it's dirty. It collects dirt, and you kind of got to scoop that out because the judges don't want to see it. So she's the comb is just gliding through her coat. Really is such a pleasure to groom her. I say that and then I find a little tiny tangle, but that's exactly what the point of this is. And if you haven't seen the other videos, I don't comb them when they're dirty because it will find knots that aren't picked up by the brush. They're smaller knots. They're not mats, they're just standard tangles. And when they're dirty and haven't been conditioned and combed, and brushed multiple times, it really doesn't make sense to try and go after those. It's just a painful, right? Like that's finding little teeny tiny knots to tug on that aren't going to add any value to their health and well-being or take any effort out of the next groom. So we don't comb when they're dirty because all it does is cause pain and doesn't add anything of value. So then we're going to do rinse on the last side, a comb. I'm trying to get all the water off of me. I probably look like a mess between the hair and the water all over me. So I'll repeat this because it's probably worth repeating if anybody out there decides they're going to get a tankless water heater. I found with all of them that when you first turn the water back on and the propane, the heater fires back up, you get a brief burst, very brief burst of extra warm water. And it's just a little shot of it, but I wait for that to pass before I start using it on the goats. I don't want them to be uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form. It's why I always have my hand with the water. It's why I'm constantly making my hand look like a prune, because that way I know that if it's comfortable for me, it's comfortable for them. If it feels warm for me, it actually feels tepid for them because their body temperature is several degrees higher than ours. So think about that, right? Their normal body temperature is in and around 103 Fahrenheit. Ours is 98.6 Fahrenheit. So there's a several degree difference there. So water that would feel warm to me might be, 85, 90 degree water. That would feel almost cold to them because it's so much different than their body temperature. And I don't want this process. They don't like it, right? They don't like to be wet. They don't like this process at all. So why make it even more torturous by using cold water or by accidentally scalding them with warm water? Now, if you've been watching these videos, I took a little bit of extra time to rinse Lotus, more so than I do with the other goats. The other goats kind of need the conditioner, even though it's a rinse off, right? I don't want all of it out because it will help with the next round of grooming so that anything they do over the next week will come out, vegetation, dirt, etc., will come out easier. Lotus, on the other hand, why are you holding your foot up, goofy girl? You're funny. Lotus, on the other hand, doesn't need that. She's not going to get dirty. Her coat doesn't collect schmutz. And there's no reason for her to be carrying around any extra conditioner. I mean, she's going to get the conditioner spray because they always do. But she doesn't need to be carrying around you know, conditioner that can be rinsed off. I got a fly now bugging me. So this is goat 3 for the day for me. And again, if you've been watching, you can do the math on how long I've been here on my feet doing this. I typically only do 2 groomings a day, just to keep it easy on my body, easy on my mental health if they're being difficult. But I want to get all these baths for the show string done so that I can do them again next week before the show. So I am pushing a little bit, but I have the pleasure of having Lotus, who is easy, Sock Monkey, who is easy, and I did my first 2, Misty and Persephone, who are a little bit harder first, so that I was on my best behavior. Ready? I know, everybody hates this part. Everybody hates that part. Just a little bit of shampoo. My bottle is starting to get empty. We'll have enough in there for Sock Monkey and probably won't finish the bottle, but it is getting low. Isn't that right? But we don't mince, or we don't scrimp on shampoo when it comes to show strings, do we? I know. Okay, rinse time. And if you've heard me talk about this with Misty, there's no good way to do this. There's no way for me to tell the goat to, close their eyes. They have to just kind of do it naturally. They spit at me. Some of them drink the water, which is always funny. Some of them lift their heads, which seems counterintuitive. Some of them inhale. Is it the best thing in the world? No, it's not. And I don't really want them to do that, but it's a minor inconvenience once or twice a year. And it's not harmful at that level. If I were doing this all the time, if they were inhaling water every day, certainly that would be a problem. If they took a couple of snorts and sniffs and spit it at me during this process, they'll be fine. That's not going to harm them. You've all sucked up water at some point in your life and you're still here. So please don't think I'm torturing the goats. I'm not. It isn't the best. They don't love it, but they are just fine. And some of them choose to be more stubborn about the inhale and the exhale of water than others. Lotus is one of those. But other than being annoyed with me, frankly, being angry at me, she's perfectly fine. Okay. I only make that comment and that reference because I know there'll be somebody that'll watch and not have watched the rest of the videos and think that I'm just, into torturing these guys. So on that note, I hope you are having a fantastic day. I hope you're not as sopping wet as I am and that you're not as angry as Lotus. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Be kind. And I will see you at the next one. Bye for now.